about a need, problem with that need, solution, which is our product, and then market landscape, industry maps, our business plan, revenues, so we can for now, and then challenges that we evaluate this product. So, rate, how big of an issue is rate? So, in 2016, 95,730 rates were reported to law enforcement. That is 4.9% higher than in 2015 and 12.4% higher than in 2012. Out of every 1,000 rapes, only about 310 are actually reported to law enforcement, and out of those, only about 6 get incarcerated. So that means that 99.5% of perpetrators walk free. It's an alarming number. I see a couple of faces that weren't expecting that number. So the current problems with forensic testing of these samples that are associated with rape cases. So there's a general line of what happens when they go to analyze a rape kit. So they screen for biological materials. They're trying to find, was there stuff on the sheets, was there stuff on the victim, things like that. And they extract and purify the DNA, they amplify that DNA, they send the DNA over for analysis so that way they can get a DNA profile, and then they have to produce a written report and then also make sure that there were no errors throughout the whole process. So that can take anywhere from 1 day to a year. This depends on the size of the lab, depends on how many technicians they have. So very big difference depending on where you are and who it is. It also can cost up to $1,500 per kit. And then on top of their everyday kind of demand, they also are trying to make some progress on the over 400,000 rape kits that are backlogged. So that brings us to a problem statement. There are over 90,000 reports of rape reported each year in the U.S., and over 400,000 sexual assault kits are backlogged. With a slow processing time of up to a year, forensic labs in the U.S. can't keep up with the demand for the analysis of sexual assault kits. Our product will reduce the amount of time needed to process these kits. And so our solution to that is our sexual assault microanalysis, or sample microanalysis device. This takes part of that process, puts it down onto a chip, puts it into a housing that's about the size of a shoebox, and then that shoebox facilitates the chemistry, the biology that's going on inside that chip, and it can sit on the bench top. So our particular device separates sperm cells from skin cells, and then takes DNA from those sperm cells and amplifies it so that a DNA profile can be obtained. So be for forensic scientists, and then the purpose of it would be to speed up the processing of each sample. So the process I talked about earlier in the middle, this takes the extraction of and purification of DNA and the amplification of DNA and puts it into this device. Oh, thank you. All right, so you have numbers on the left side from the traditional method, which is where a scientist is sitting there doing a lot of this. This device automates it, so and the materials are also a lot less than other equipment that is currently used for the processing of these devices, and the cost per sample is about half of what is currently used. It also takes about 2 hours instead of 6. Which brings us to our value proposition. So for the 400 plus forensic labs in the US that are overwhelmed with the processing demands of sexual assault kits, aka SAKs, our self-sorting micro device is a product that will speed up and simplify SAK testing. Unlike the traditional analysis process, our micro device is automated, leading to a processing time that is 10 times faster and a reduction of the 400,000 plus backlog rape kits. That brings us to the market. So our device fits into what's called the lab-on-chip market. Okay. The global lab-on-chip market was estimated about $4.46 billion in 2016. It's expected to grow to $7.95 billion by 2022, and it's growing at a rate of 11%. Most of the market is made up of diagnostics. That's the largest segment in the market. Then our segment, our device fits into the analytical devices segment, which brings up about 17% of the market. And then the major players are Illumina, Becton Dickinson, and Fluidigm, and then there's a few others listed at the bottom as well. That brings us to our industry map that Taj will talk about.
All right, so we've done some significant market research. Our team has done some significant market research for the industry. And based on our research, we were able to identify that some supply chain for this industry has been like, it's basically broken down into 4 major segments. We were also able to identify all the major players under each of those major segments. Now, if we were to fall on this map, we are projecting ourselves to be somewhere, we are projecting ourselves to be the application providers, but we may also fall on the systems design. With our research, we were also able to, identify key areas and, key attributes that we need to consider to come up with a business model that we put together on our business model canvas here. But some of those that I'd like to, talk a little bit about is, as a company, if we get started as a company, our team identified that, some of the preliminary activities for our firm, for our company, would be to continually develop the platform that we have. Our technology is that it needs to do more development, because right now it only does a specific job, a specific function, and it has a capability of adding in more attributes to that specific job that it does today. We also identified that getting a patent would be very important to us, and that's something that we'll have to work upon. Our technology has been filed for patent, but the application is under review right now, but that's one of the things that we'll have to make sure that we follow up, make sure that we get the patent on that. The other thing is the validation. So again, we have our product has a prototype, but that has been lab tested. It has been validated in the lab settings, not on the market, not commercially. So bringing our product to the market, I think it is very important for us to have some kind of commercial validation done beforehand before we take it to our customers. That brings us to cost structure here. So research and development, definitely, as I said, we need to continually develop on our platform. Research and development is going to be one of the main factors in our cost considerations. The other thing that we have listed there is marketing. For a couple of years, of course, since this is a very new product, a very novel product in the market, we don't have any competitors that does exactly what we are trying to do. We see that there will be some more marketing that we require for our product. Fabrication is another major factor in the cost consideration. As a firm, as our business strategy, what we are planning on doing is outsourcing the fabrication of these devices and microchips to our fabrication partners that we've identified. That's basically going to be all our cost of goods sold is basically the fabrication cost, because we are not going to fabricate those in-house. And then validation, again, as I said, one of our key activity would be validation of this technology for commercial viability. So validation is something that's going to be, we are considering as a major factor of cost. That brings us to our revenue streams. So we've identified, our main product is device and the microchips that goes into these devices. So they'll definitely be our main source of revenue. As a team, we've also talked about some other sources of revenues that we possibly have, based on this technology. But we are in a very initial stage of validating if they are actual revenue streams or not. So we don't have it up here, but that's something that we'll probably add it at some point. And then, as again I said, we've done some significant research in supply chain and how the industry works today. We were able to identify that the best suited pricing model for us, given the knowledge and information that we have, is a tier pricing for our product. Based on all that market research, based on the pricing strategy that we've identified and everything, we've projected our revenues to hit about $38 million by year 5, and we'll look, we'll closely look at these numbers. So again, our team has done a great job doing market research on this industry, based on which we were able to project the numbers, estimated numbers for unit sales. We've projected our device unit sales to hit about 300 devices per year by year 5, which will basically require about 300,000 plus chips per year for those devices that we are selling. So we'll be providing the devices as well as chips. We've already done our calculations on our tiered pricing and whatnot, and with significant backing of the sources that we found, we've basically derived our revenue estimates to be about $38 million by year 5 that I already showed on the previous slides. We were also able to identify all the different costs and expenses for the industry. The average industry cost is about 15 to 16%, And that's what we've taken into considerations in our calculations, which basically leaves us a healthy margin of over 85%. All right, so having said that, I'll give it back to Katie for a wrap up.
Alright, so just some challenges that we have faced while doing research related to this product. The numbers tend to be very vague and they vary greatly. So depending on the state, they have different protocols as to how you have to report things and what kind of inventories you have to keep. So a lot of the backlog data is estimates, and that varies on, Washington State, for instance, they have anywhere from 8,000 to 10,000. That's a 2,000 number difference, which makes a huge difference when it comes to trying to reduce these backlogs. And then also as far as the number of sexual assaults that happen per year that potentially could need testing, those are also estimates because they believe that a lot of people don't report them. As stated earlier, out of every 1,000, only 310 actually get reported to law enforcement. So there's a lot of estimating going on. Forensic analysts do a great job at trying to figure out what's happening there, but our numbers are a little hard to get a hold of sometimes and to solidify. And then getting in touch with those involved with forensic science. A lot of these people work for state labs or federal labs. Some are for local law enforcement, but again, depending on the state, depending on where you're at, depends on whether it's going to be a state lab or a local lab that's doing it or the local law enforcement that's taking care of it. So it's kind of hard to figure out depending on where you want to go and what state you want to talk to, where to go to find these people. And last but not least, with dealing with federal and state entities also comes federal and state funding. So that is something we're going to be up against when it comes to selling our product. So really making sure that at the federal and state level that people really believe that this could help solve their problem, especially with the backlogs. With that, I'd like to thank you and welcome any questions or feedback.
Very good presentation. I'm impressed. I'm not clear what is the actual product. So what's the patented technology behind the product?
So it is the chip itself that the science is actually happening in, as well as the housing that controls the fluid movement through that chip.
So there's a chemistry associated with what's going
So
on
there's
in the...
biochem happening inside the chip, and then that housing is helping facilitate the biochem within the chip. So you can sell a device and the chip together, but the chips are reusable, so therefore you sell a device and then you can sell multiple chips for one device.
You talked about the cost and the time, which was great. What you didn't tell me is, and by the way, very good presentation, you didn't tell me how it compared as far as efficacy or effectiveness to the standard. So if it's cost less and it's quicker, but I'm missing 50% of, so why didn't you touch on that? Do you not know? You haven't validated? Do you have an estimate?
So the technologist has given us an estimate on how effective it is. So she has an estimate for her fill rate, but she does not have data that backs up her estimate. So she is giving us a ballpark number, but does not have the data to validate that number, which is why we've kind of been avoiding it in that sense.
What you think ballpark? I mean, we're on a roll under NDAs here, so ballpark.
Ballpark range of the fill rate.
She said it's equivalent.
Well, yeah, it's
It-
current lab.
And I think she said that the fail rate was around 5%. So every once in a while you get a sample that you can't get DNA from, and that's mostly because there's just not enough DNA off the sample. So those samples you would have to go back and do manually.
Okay, but you're not sacrificing effectiveness for time or cost.
Right. Yes.
I would suspect that for these types of tests that there's a pretty intensive protocol or regimen from the investigative labs in terms of qualifying these types of solutions for their utilization. How would you guys go about, getting law enforcement and crime labs to say, okay, this is a better way to go about doing it, as opposed to what they're already doing?
So what would make them switch over? I think a lot of that, there is a lot of pressure from the government right now to really kind of deal with the backlogging. And so I think law enforcement agencies are feeling that as well. And for instance, like Washington State has openly said that they're having a really hard time figuring out ways to do what the government wants them to do to get rid of all these backlogs. Places like Ohio have been more successful, so people right now are trying to learn from each other, and the people that have been able to get rid of some of their backlogs, people that have been slow on it. And it seems like states are trying to work together to see, okay, well, you were able to do it, so how did you do it? Like, how are you making progress, and what are we not doing in order to do that? And some have also teamed with the FBI, so the FBI is testing some of their samples, so they send some stuff off to the FBI, and they do stuff in their own labs as well. So there's a lot of different approaches to it, but I think it's a prevalent of enough of an issue to where they're looking for solutions. They just, a lot of places haven't found one that works for them yet.
So to add to that, like, if you go on to Department of Justice website, and this is all like data, they've realized that this is a big problem, the backlog of all these cases in different jurisdictions. So they've started funding this, state agencies and, local agencies to get their, this backlogs cleared up. They are also inviting industry partners to bring in, better solution to, get rid of this backlogs. And, there are like fundings that are available from the Department of Justice as well as some other state agencies as well to bring in new partners that can provide a better solution to the industry. And then, we, as I said, like one of our main activity as a startup would be validation of this technology at a commercial level. So now, if we can conduct that validation at a, at a satisfactory level, and then if we can present our data to the state agencies or federal agencies, then I'm pretty sure that we'll possibly see some partnership.
There's a faculty member here at NC State named James Brunet, B-R-U-N-E-T. He leads the Public Safety Leadership Initiative, and he often works with law enforcement leadership on a lot of different initiatives. And he might be a good resource for you guys to reach out to connect to some of these labs and things of that nature.
Thanks for sure.
One additional question on the cost side. Did you make an estimate of how much time it will take and an idea of how much money it might take to get to the point of confirming validation? So when you're ready to start revenue?
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question right.
Okay, so you can't start selling until you finish designing the product and validate it, I would guess. And so how much time and money might it take to get there? So you said after 5 years, you got 38 million revenue, but the question is in the first year or two, you're not gonna have any revenue, but you're gonna be spending money. And how much money might that be?
Right, yeah, so I mean, again, we haven't started exploring and how we can commercially validate this. But again, as I said, like, there has been some lab validation that's done because we have a prototype in place. Based on, the information that we have today, we are expecting to start making revenue in the first year itself.
In the first year?
Yeah. But it's not gonna be significant, but it's gonna be a start.
Okay, well, maybe the course will help you adjust that
Maybe,
thinking.
yeah, maybe, I can be completely wrong, but yeah.
We like optimistic.
Very optimistic, yes.
That
and
is
we'll
something
get
that
to-
we're still exploring too, as to how long validation will take. Because it's a field that a lot of us are not very familiar with, so.
Yeah, sure.
While I'm from the life sciences field, I also don't know when it comes to forensic science, what forensic labs look for, because you basically just have to do a validation to convince people to buy. So we're looking into exactly what that might take.
Comments? Okay, I'm gonna give you the in order, so somebody from the team just record. You don't have to answer these, just things to think about for the written and for the next round of presentations. I did a good job of really sensitive topic. I think you were really professional about it, so I appreciate that, because it's a really charged, a very charged topic. Where you have the problem statement, change that word problem to need, that's actually a problem statement, not a need statement. So then after that, my real question is, so what is the problem? I.e., why does it take so long, and why aren't there 400,000? Is it the sample sizes aren't big enough, you can't differentiate enough? So what you had as a problem statement was really a need statement, but it was a pretty good start for a need statement. So change that to need, value proposition. The idea that you could reduce the 400,000 backlog is really good. Any estimates as to like how much we could reduce it by 30% a year and it could be cleared in 2 or 3 years? I don't know the answer to that, but that would be a question. And I know you don't have the data to do that, but that's the kind of data you're gonna want for, you know, kind of the end of the semester. And this one actually is just a question. Is the issue in the long run backlog or cost? Or is the answer yes and yes in terms of?
It's both. So part of the reason, from what I know so far, part of the reason that there is the backlog is because it wasn't a big enough case where so what happens is law enforcement agencies will make sure that a rape kit gets collected. But then if they don't feel like they need it for prosecution purposes, then they won't actually submit it to the lab. So then it just sits. Yeah, so it's kind of a mix of, do they actually get submitted to the lab, yes or no? And then part of that is too, is they're trying to do the higher caliber cases, just so that way they can get some of the
Higher rate of conviction.
right. So they want a higher rate of conviction. They want the people that might be serial rapists out there, like, you know, they're gonna test samples that might be related with those types of cases first. So it's a matter of priority, and then also a matter of they're not testing all of them at the same time because you have to pay more technicians to do that, and so you have to have the space for more technicians. And then something I didn't include on here, it can take up to 2 years to train a technician to get to the point where they can run these samples by themselves. And so it's both. It depends on the state too. And
Yeah, that's why it's hard to explain. You can't help the 400,000 that are gonna sit on the shelf and not be submitted for processing. So, yeah, let's think through where we could, okay, here's where we really speed up the process and do this. Okay. Then, make it clear, because I wasn't quite clear, I get what you do, it's a lab on a chip, kind of basically, you know. Make it clear what the unique or differentiating factor in your technology is, because there are diagnostics. So what is unique or differentiated about yours versus the competition there? And the other things I have was, will your product require some kind of approval? I know there's validation, but does it require any regulatory approval or anything? And I don't know the answer to that.
as far as I know, no. We
If
have not-
that's true, that's good.
Yeah, we have not come across anything. I think the main thing, and I talked to, there's an immunologist on campus who I have talked to about this because it deals with the science in the chip he can relate to. He said a lot of the problems with a lot of the lab on the chips is really just people aren't using them because they have to go through a validation process. So it's
Okay,
really,
so that's the validation
it's
substitutes.
really convincing people that it works the same or better than what they're currently using. So as far as I know, there's no FDA because you're not putting it into humans or anything like that. So for now, my answer is no.
But now we know what we need
Yeah.
to know to do that. And the final thing to include next time is exactly tier pricing, what that was doing. I know it's kind of early to know the numbers.
Yeah, so we have it in our financial sheets
Okay.
and the report, but we need to.
Hey, Lisa, comments?
I had to unmute myself. I do have some comments. Can you go back to the slide with the numbers at the beginning? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
We hear you.
Okay.
This one?
No, the one after that. When you start talking about the case that you're making, you started, I think you said something about 99.7% of people walk free. So, but then you went right into sort of, I think you went into what your product was after that. I kind of, to make your statement more powerful, and I may have missed it, what is the breakdown of the reason, the 99.5%? Like, how much of that is due to the backlog? And I sort of didn't get a sense of that. That I think would make your case stronger if you can establish that a larger number of those particular free people could be convicted if you had this evidence. And then the other thing, I mean, I think other people have addressed things, but I thought the presentation was very nice and very conversational, except for the slide where you guys hit value proposition. I know that we give you that template, but think about it, instead of expressing it exactly as we say it, you know, statement word for word, think about integrating that throughout and using that information maybe as a summary slide so you don't sound like you're reading a template, because that was the only part where you know, it did feel sort of like the Mad Lib where you're dropping in this word, and this word in the spots. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes it does.
Yeah, but it was very well done. We have some, I can think of a few lab people that maybe I can get you to talk to, both forensics and lab on a chip for a future voice of customer. So track me down when I get back. I'll get this to you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Anybody? Thank you so much.